Hi, my name is Roger Smith, and I'm the host of the True Blue Lounge. Today, I have a really great guest. His name is Errol McKellar, MBE. I bring you these programs because I just want us to have some authentic conversations. In social media nowadays, everybody's, living maybe a lie or a fantasy world. But, I just want to have some truth and, inspire. So without further ado, here's Errol. Hi, Errol. How are you doing?
Hello, and good afternoon, good evening, good night, whichever works for all of us, right? Honor and pleasure to be on here with you, Roger. Just having a chat.
Nice, nice. So before we go down into the prostate cancer survivor story, I just want to know a little bit about you. So where were you born and where in London do you live?
Right, I was born in an area called Brent, Harlesden, northwest London. I grew up there in 1957. That's when I entered this wonderful world, August the 15th. My mum said it was a difficult birth. I always remember that part of the conversation. So I'm not really sure how to explain that one in detail, but I'm here, and through my family and God and wonderful people like yourselves, you know, I've survived something that has taken a lot of us good people, and my history is an interesting one. When I grew up, I wanted to be a footballer, and that didn't happen. So my dad said, "Well, son, you're gonna have to get a job because no football ain't paying no bills." So that's how brutal it was, really.
Yeah. Were you a mechanic at one time as well?
I was a mechanic. Yeah, my dad got me a job, right, working with one of his friends, right, in a garage, and I ended up finding out that it was something. Even though I didn't want to do it, because my
Uh-huh.
dad was in the motor business, my brother was in the motor business, even my eldest sister was in the motor business, and I did not want to. I wanted to play football. I thought I was the best goalkeeper in the world, right? And there wasn't many black goalkeepers back then when I
True, true.
started, right? And I then found out, when I started working in this garage, right, for my dad's friend, that I was quite good at doing this job, and so it wasn't just, oh, well, it's a job for the sake of a job. I ended up really taking an interest in what I was doing, and started to get some certificates for it, started to get some awards for it as well. And I thought, you know what? You know, sometimes destiny finds you, or you find it. Put it that way.
Understood, understood. I used to run around with some friends in Tottenham, and we were all into the cars and stuff. And at the time, it was about changing your own brake pads because you daren't make anyone else
Wow.
be in charge of you stopping your car. We're
Yeah.
bleeding our brakes, I really enjoyed it. I think the only thing for me was in the winter months, and you know what it was like as black people in the winter under your car, and it's got to be done. You're hitting
Yeah.
your fingers, and when you hit your fingers in the cold, it's a little bit. So I've been there, man. I've been there. I
Yeah.
kind of know.
So you know the suffering, Roger. You
Yes,
know.
yes, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
plus, I'm in the telecom business, so I used to be out on roofs changing antennas and all that stuff in
Ah,
real bad temperatures. So when a brother looks at me and tells me he has a tough job, I just let him know, man. Until you've been on the rooftop, you know what
yeah.
I mean, with a wrench, hating life. You don't know what
I
work
think
is.
you know what. It's part of our punishment, right? In order to survive, you have to go through those rituals, isn't it?
Yep, most definitely. Hey,
Yeah.
so just vibe with me. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to create a nice, relaxing environment where me and you can talk about a difficult subject.
Yeah.
For people out there that's watching, please subscribe to the True Blue Media. So, Errol, when were you first diagnosed with prostate cancer, and what led to the diagnosis?
you've started with a great question. My diagnosis happened at the end of 2010, right? When my wife Sharon was complaining about my snoring. And I have to tell you, Roger, believe you me, snoring has got nothing to do with prostate cancer, right? The reason that I mention the word snoring is because this is a situation that unfortunately you go to your doctor for one thing and find out about something else. And you know what? I turned to my wife and I said, look, if this snoring sort of bothers you that much, right? Because she was complaining, she couldn't sleep and so forth. I said, make an appointment with the doctor and I'll go. And she made the appointment. I went to the doctor. I sat in the reception room, picked up a leaflet off the table, read the leaflet, prostate cancer information for black men. So I read the leaflet and I thought, this is interesting, because I had not really, thought about it or even, had any inkling of, what it entailed until I read this leaflet. And when I went up to the reception, right, my intention was to make an appointment, right, to come back and do this blood test, which is what this leaflet was telling me about. When I got to the reception, right, the young lady said, Mr. McKellar, you don't need an appointment. It's a PSA test and it's a simple blood test that takes less than 10 minutes. And little did I imagine, right, that 10 minutes was going to change the rest of my life, right? I did the blood test, right, because she said we could do this now, right? So I did the blood test, sat back down after the blood test, waited to see the doctor about the snoring, which took ages, by the way. And I remember, even to this day, I remember I got home in the evening and my wife was cooking the dinner at the time. And I turned to her and I said to her, by the way, while I was waiting to see the doctor about the snoring, I did a blood test for prostate cancer. And she stopped cooking and she looked at me really hard. And I have to say, right, she looked at me like there was an argument coming, And she said to me, what's that got to do with your snoring? And I can only tell you and the listeners, right, that the answer I gave her had to have been a good one because I actually did get my dinner that night, But to move the story on, right, a couple of weeks after that first blood test, right, I get a phone call, Mr. McKellar, we would like you to come in and do another blood test. So I said, is there any problems, doctor? And he said, no, it's a routine thing. We usually do a follow-up on the first blood test. So nothing to concern yourself with at this moment. So I thought, okay. Anyway, done the second blood test, didn't think anything of it, right? Couple of weeks after that second blood test, I get a phone call. Mr. McKellar, we booked you in for a biopsy. So I said, when is that then? And he said, well, it's actually this morning. And I said, oh, and he said, we have been trying to get in touch with you, right? We've sent you email messages, we've sent you text messages, we've tried to ring you. And to tell you the truth, Roger, I absolutely ignored all of those calls and messages, right? Because I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. So as far as I was concerned, right, it was all a routine thing. I'd done it. I didn't have to go back and do any more. So I kind of was a bit blasé about it, to be honest. But I took the details from him, right? I put the phone down and then I rang my wife. And you can imagine what happened there, right? I rang her. I told her, look, I've just had a phone call from the doctor. They want to see me about having a biopsy. She said, when do they want to do that? And I told her, today. They want to do it today. And she said, well, how come they've only just rang you? And I had to tell her, well, they have been trying to get in touch with me, but I've just ignored it and took no notice. So she wasn't happy with that, bless her. But, she turned to me and she said, look, don't worry. She said, don't drive, get a cab and I'll meet you at the hospital. And just before I put the phone down, I said to her, by the way, what's a biopsy? And she said, look, it's a routine thing that you have to go through. Sometimes they just need to do some further examinations and that's the best way to do it. And to be honest, I'm glad she didn't go into details about what the biopsy is because very, very difficult, very, very intrusive and not comfortable by any stretch of the imagination, but something that is needed and very important. So I had that, and it took a while to recover from that, I have to tell you, because it is very, very evasive, and very difficult to come to terms with. But as I said, it's something that had to be done. So after that, a couple of weeks after that, they called me in for an MRI scan. And a couple of weeks after that scan, they called me and my wife in, sat both down, and they said, "Mr. McKellar, your prostate is covered in cancer." Well, Roger and listeners, let me tell you, I got up and I walked out of that room, right? I literally got up and I walked out of the room. When I went and I sat, I came out of the building and went and I sat in my car. And when I sat in that car, that's when the word cancer hit me. And I don't know to this day whether I was scared, frightened, or the whole lot in one, right? I just remember bursting into tears and crying helplessly like a baby because I just thought, I'm going to die here and there's nothing I can do to stop it from happening. And I remember my wife came and she sat in the car with me, right? And she looked at me and she said, "Listen, all the years that I've been with you and I've known you, I've never known you to quit on anything that you've ever done." Well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I had to man up and wipe those tears from my eyes.
How old were you at the time?
I was 53 years of age, right? 53 years of age. And I tell you what's frightening about this, right? At 50, I had a full MOT, as I call it, full body medical check, right? And I call it an MOT because as a mechanic, that's what I used to do. I used to MOT people's cars. And there was nothing wrong with my prostate. My prostate reading was 000.
Just a
right?
second there, Errol. And for people out there, the word MOT, it's about road fitness. So it's a check of all the body parts, blood tests, everything. So that's the reference. It's just that the Americans may not. We use something else for MOT. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, right. So thank you for explaining that. So that was the breakdown of what happened there, right? So, I looked at her after she said that to me, and I thought to myself, is she having a go at me, or is this her way of motivating me to get up and do something? Well, I have to tell you, I took the latter, and I said, okay, then, right, let's go back in there and face the doctor. So we went back in the room. I said, "Doctor, what do I need to do to deal with this problem?" Right. The doctor looked at me and he said, "Mr. McKellar, if we don't remove your prostate, you will be dead in 6 months." Right. And I think, to be fair, really, it couldn't be more brutal than how he delivered that statement. So I turned to him and I said, "Okay, then, doctor, let's do it. Let's remove it then." He said, "Mr. McKellar, there will be some issues that you'll have to deal with, and there will be some side effects that you're going to have to come to terms with." I said, "Doctor, if I got a chance of staying alive, I'll take it." Right.
So, Errol, what gave you that sense of maturity to be so agreeable? And was there ever a time when you, just around that part, where you wanted to give up?
I think I wanted to give up. You know what? That's a fantastic question. And I've been asked that question numerous amount of times. And the answer to it is that when they told me that I had that cancer, and I went and I sat in the car and started crying, that was my first remembrance of the word giving up, because I'm usually a man who has a plan B. If something's not working, I'll have a plan B to try and do something different. I didn't have a plan B for this. I wasn't even prepared for plan A, and I tell you, when that word cancer, right, whenever it's mentioned, it just sends a complete shiver right through your whole body, because it's not something that you are totally in control of, and if it chooses to manifest itself, right, then there's very little you can do. So that's how I felt. I felt helpless and I felt lost. And one of the spirits and the reasons that I feel that I've come through this, right, is because, first, about my belief in God, and my belief, right, and my support from my wife, my family, and everybody around me, Roger, including yourself, right? You don't even know me, but yet you're interested to know why and how I've gone through this and dealt with this, and what I can do to help others, right, going through this, because this is a big, big concern, right? A real big concern, you know. So I had the operation, but unfortunately, the cancer had already started outside of the protective wall, right? So I then had to have nearly 3 months of radiotherapy to burn away the rest of the cancer. But what that does is it burns away other things as well. So, when I go back to the statement that the doctor made about, um, some things that I'm going to have to make adjustments to, and some side effects that I'm going to have to deal with. So, what it has left me with now is a major incontinence and erectile dysfunction, you know. And if you're not mentally strong, right, believe you me, right, those two things can break you as a man.
Question for you.
Yeah,
So I asked you one question before, and this is where the inspiration of these stories come.
yeah,
Knowing these side effects,
yeah,
you know what it's like to be a man. Certain things our pride is everything to us.
yeah, yeah.
Did you feel like giving up again?
I did. I come back to that same question that you asked me, right? You know, that when I was left with those two situations, right, I did feel like giving up. And again, I have to look at my inspiration. As I said, my belief in God, but my wife, Sharon, was my inspiration, because you know what? When I had the operation and then I had to have the radiotherapy, right? I remember turning to her one morning, right? And I said to her, I need to find some way of doing something about this, because God must have kept me alive for a reason, because I had 92.5% cancer in my prostate, right? 92.5% cancer. So it was literally, when they say it was covered, it was literally covered.
Can I say something to you? And I'm sorry to take away your flow, but
No, go on.
this is the style. So Sharon is Superwoman, don't you?
Listen, we
The
are
fact
blessed.
that you're the provider,
Yeah.
you're the man of the house. Some women wouldn't have been able to cope. They
No.
wouldn't have been able to be that support. I'm not saying these women aren't good women. I'm
Yeah.
just saying it takes a great woman to make you feel and want to
Yeah.
go on. I just wanted to do that, and hopefully she'll come in the picture one, and you can even introduce Superwoman to us. But go ahead, sir.
You know what, Roger? She doesn't do camera at all. You know what? In all of the campaign work that I do, she's the brains and the force behind the background of what I do with this campaign. Because
Nice.
let me tell you, I don't know, since starting the campaign to raise the awareness, the much needed awareness of this particular conversation, right? I don't know any man that has gone through this by themselves. You know, the women in their lives are very, very important, because listen, first of all, right, you and your partner have to come to terms, right, with a different approach to your sexual life. You have to have a different approach to the fact that you can't go out wearing certain clothes because of the levels of incontinence that you deal with. So it's not just a personal issue for you to deal with. It's a personal issue for those close to you as well, because when you're diagnosed with this particular issue, it doesn't just affect you. It affects all those who love and care about you and others, and
How are you
I'm,
able to divorce your ego and have this acceptance? And sorry, I'm delving, but that's
oh,
my style,
no,
Errol, because
no, I love it.
we like authenticity.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you something. I tell you, right. You have to have not just a physical strength, but you have to have a mental strength in you to cope with this kind of a situation, right? Because as you've said it, and a lot of our people listening will allude to this as well. It's a pride thing. A man. in our campaign, right, we've had men say they would rather die with this problem than have somebody take away their erection, right? They would rather suffer in silence. That's why it's called a silent killer, because, and particularly in our race, right, which at this moment there's 1 in 4 African Caribbean men that are dying of prostate cancer. They've had it, and unfortunately 1 in 4 will die of it. And unless we are involved in the research, and I applaud the brothers in America, right, who are getting behind this campaign, right, to make sure that they're involved in the research. Because, listen, in the research world, what might work for a white man is not necessarily going to work for a black man, because we are built differently, So these complications, I mean, at the moment, the stats tell us in England, right, it's 1 in 12 Asian men, 1 in 8 white men, and 1 in 4 African Caribbean men. And if you've got a history of it in your family, the numbers are worse. But let me tell you the problem about this history. In the Caribbean community, they don't talk about prostate cancer. It's either waterworks, complication. That's if you have a conversation. When I was diagnosed, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer. My dad looked at me in that typical Caribbean attitude and said, son, I had that 5 years ago. And he was so dismissive of it. I struggled to talk to him for nearly 5-6 months over this problem, because I thought, how can he be so dismissive? You've got 4 boys, right? 3 grandsons, right? Surely it's a topic of conversation. But since I started doing this campaign, I have learned, right, and particularly in our race, we don't talk enough about this particular thing. So you grow up knowing Mr. Smith, Uncle Smith died of complication, or Uncle Roger died of waterwork problems.
Stoppage of water.
Stoppage of water.
Yeah,
Never,
yeah.
And let me tell you, they don't even put prostate cancer on the death certificate. They don't put that on there in the Caribbean. Right?
I'll have you know, Errol, though, the brothers that I talk to regularly in my circle,
yes,
we speak regularly about all men's health. And why we do that, the ego has to come down and we talk about it. When I say talk, I mean we talk about everything. You know what I mean?
Good. Yeah.
Even down to the miserable woman in our lives that are our saviors.
Yes.
We talk about everything. And the problem I'm finding, and I hate to sound preachy, is this whole heap of lying on the internet and everybody good, blah, blah, blah.
I know.
The road ahead is getting more and more bumpier and bumpier. Yeah? There's gloom ahead because we're going to die and we're going to lose some great people. So we need to start talking to each other, making sure your loved ones know how you feel and, getting by it.
And you know what, Roger? It's funny you say that. This year, I have done 10 funerals, right? 8 of them were for prostate cancer. 8 of them.
Wow. Do you think the statistics that you, and maybe if I think about it, I'll be able to come to some sort of conclusion, but the statistics that you specified by race, Asian, African American, Afro-Caribbean, African, and Caucasian, do you think it's a diet-based? Do you think it's a stress-based? What do you think it is? What are they saying?
I think it's a combination of those situations. Certainly stress brings on illnesses that, the body is still fighting to cope with, because the body's a fantastic mechanism, right? Especially when it's injured, how it repairs itself. But it gets tested every time. Every illness that we get is a test of our body mechanism to be able to put things back together. And it may not put it back together in the same capacity that it was once before, and you're right. How are we, the biggest challenge for us coping, like, if you break your hand, then you break your hand, right? But when something internal goes, that's a deeper problem. And then you've got to rely on your mental strength to deal with that.
So, so Errol, how did the diagnosis and the treatment affect your relationships, your work, your
Yeah,
ability to make money? How did it your key sparring? What
yeah.
happened
I mean, you know
from your
what?
point of view?
Yeah, I'm going to be very open about that, right? You know, obviously it put a different perspective on the relationship with my loved ones, right? But the support that they gave me was immense, and I cannot thank them enough because they are the reason why I remain positive. When I said to my wife, I need to find some way of doing something about this problem because I feel God has kept me alive for a reason. She looked at me and she said, "You know what? This cancer only knocked you down. It hasn't knocked you out." And you're going to go 12 rounds with it. But what you will do, you'll take everybody in the ring with you and give yourself a chance to win it on points. And I thought, I have to work with that inspiration. That is what I wake up with every day. My plan is to save at least one person a day, if not more, from going through this silent killer. Because I have watched this eat away at men, right? Eat away at men. As I said to you, in 2021, in 2021, our wonderful queen and her daughter gave me an MBE from my campaign for services to prostate cancer and saving over 1 million people. Right?
For someone that doesn't understand, and I know you use the word MBE, but not
Yeah.
realize if you're in Jamaica or Canada, maybe sometime in Canada, yeah, and in the USA, what's
Yeah.
an MBE? So
Yeah.
please, could you let everyone know what?
It's an honor. It's an honor bestowed on um, members of the public or somebody for doing something
So
out of
MBE means member of the British Empire. Yeah?
the British Empire. Yeah. So it comes with a lot of privileges, and I have to say I was very honored when I got this letter. I was very, very honored, because one, I didn't do this campaign for this. I did this campaign because when I was working in my garage, right, as a mechanic, and if I tell you the story quickly about that one, I went back to work after being out of work for 6 months. And the first week I walked into my garage, right, one of my customers came in and, he said, "I'm really glad to see you back at work. I heard you was going through a really difficult period." And in the conversation, it was really pleasant between me and him until I looked at him. And up to this day, I don't know where it came from. Right, Roger. I looked at him and I said, "When was the last time you had a PSA test?" Right. And all of a sudden, it's like I touched a nerve. He looked at me really serious, and he turned around to me and he said, "What the bleep, bleep, bleep?" And I think you know what the word bleep, bleep, bleep means, right? What the bleep, bleep, bleep has that got to do with my gearbox not working on my car? Because he brought his car in for me to fix his car, right?
Was he
And
Jamaican?
yes,
And did he
yeah,
curse real Jamaican bad word?
real Jamaican. So when I say bleep, 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 right, out of respect, right,
So,
it's
no,
for,
no, no. It's all right. You can cuss clot here. It's okay.
yeah, I you know what, but because I have to do this so often, right, I think, yeah, if I start going down that road, right, people are gonna want me to sort of break down exactly what that means. And I said to myself, something, I need to bleep it. So yeah,
Nice.
but you can use the terminology because, as I say, he was a hardcore Jamaican, hardcore, you know, and then without thinking about it, I turned to him and I said to him, "Listen, I'm going to give you a 20% discount on the work I'm going to do in your car if you go and get your prostate check." Right. Well, let me tell you, Roger, clearly I never thought this one through when I said it, right? Because 2 weeks later, right, when he come back in, right, and he was waving this piece of paper in his hand, he said, "I took your advice and I went and done that check," right? And I looked at him and I looked up into the sky and I said, "God, this has just cost me £200." Right. He obviously saw the look on my face, right? And he turned to me and said, he said, "Don't worry about the money." Right. He said, "Don't worry about the money." And he repeated it. He said it twice. "Don't worry about the money." And I remember looking at him and I looked up there and I said, "God, thank you." right? He said, but I think you better read this letter, right? And let me tell you, Roger, and I can tell you word for word to this day, right? To this day, I can tell you word for word what was in that letter. He had 25% cancer in his prostate. He didn't even know that he had a problem with his prostate. He only went and done the check because I was offering him a 20% discount, right?
Hey, please don't ask me if I've taken my PSA test. I don't want you to ask me because I look like when you ask people, you don't go well.
I ask people every day, Roger. So the question I'm going to say to you: when was the last time you done a PSA test?
So I done mine. I do mine on my birthday every year, and
Love
I make sure I do a PSA test, and there's an extra one I have to pay for called an ACE test, ACE.
Yeah,
So I'm pretty.
on it. You're on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
No, well done, well done. I mean, I ask the question every day because you'd be amazed at how many people haven't done one. They've never done one. There's lots of people that have never ever had a PSA test, right? Yeah.
Or a rectal exam neither.
No, no. But you know that they are phasing out the rectal examination, you know.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
they're phasing that out because the medical world are doing some fantastic things with this prostate issue. And that's why it's important for us as a nation of people to be involved in the testing, right? To find some cure for what we have to go through with this prostate cancer issue. And the only way that that's going to happen is if we do get involved in the research world, because as I say, you know, they know, particularly in the African Caribbean community, right? They know that black men don't like anything going inside them. Everything's come out, they're telling you. Things don't go in that part. In, you know, that part of the garage, right? You know, things ain't going in, it's you're coming out.
You know, Errol, what sort of strategies and what am I thinking about? And support and for coping did you have? What mentally? How did you? What were good things you done to allow you to deal with it personally, not about
Right.
other people now. You.
No. I tell you what, I tell you why that's a great question, because you know, even though I didn't make it as a footballer, right, I ended up becoming a football coach, right? And that gives you a strength and a wisdom that until you're involved in coaching and helping to educate
By the way,
young
I want to judge you. What team do you support?
Tottenham.
Okay, Tottenham's okay. If you were going to say Arsenal, we were going to have a problem. But go ahead.
No, don't worry.
Tottenham's
I
okay.
live in a house full of Arsenal supporters, so you're all right. You're safe, man.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
so yeah, but you know, luckily, I ended up being a better coach than I was a footballer, right? And I played in goal as a footballer, as I said to you. So then there wasn't a lot of black coaches then, not a lot of black goalkeepers then. But I found that I was very fortunate to be able to coach some very good players. I mean, in England, right, you've heard of the great David Beckham. Well, I spent 5 years with him, right? Sol Campbell, Ashley Cole, Ledley King, right? Jermaine Defoe, right? I've got probably over 300 professional footballers today that play football because of the work I was allowed to do with them. So
Nice.
that kind of helped, that kind of took a distraction away from sitting down and fretting about this issue, if that makes sense.
So how was I mean, that's really good. You know, hopefully everyone else will have something, whether it's gardening or, you know what I mean, something to keep them
Yeah, yeah.
where they
And I had
needed to
my
be.
love of cars then as well. I did, you know, I mean, I was very proud to be a very good mechanic, you know, and an honest mechanic, you know, because, you know, I did a job that I didn't start out enjoying it, but as I progressed in it, I enjoyed it even more. And the challenge that it gave me, you know, I was, as I said, I was very fortunate to be able to find ways to occupy my mind, you know, to the point that you know, myself and my wife, we set up the Errol McKellar Foundation because we just felt that, you know, at 20 during the COVID period, right, we looked at it and thought, look, people are not getting any forms of treatment or help, right? and we need to find some way of getting this important message out to the masses, right? You know, and I'm talking all men, black, white, Asian, all men, about the importance of this. And I have to tell you, the women are very key in this message, right, of us men being educated about prostate cancer. Very, very important, women are.
They are queens. We have to, you know, put them
Yeah,
up and respect them, because
we
without
do.
them, we are no one.
No, well, they gave us life, didn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Gave
You
us
know,
life.
how has surviving prostate cancer changed your outlook on life? Just life, and how you now,
Yeah.
when you wake up in the morning, what is it? What's it mean to you?
When I wake up every day, that's a blessing. For me, that is a blessing, because I have lost people in this journey that have had less cancer than myself, right? You know, and when we started this charity, right, the Errol McKellar Foundation, we never imagined the importance of what we are doing and why we are doing it. You know, and I know that people rely on me and my team, right, to get them the right information, but more importantly, to get them the important information of what they need to do. Because listen, I will always say this, and I will go on record and say this, you know, I didn't save a million people. They said I've saved a million people plus. But in order for we to save a million people, right, people have to believe in what you are saying. And I will only bring them the truth. I'm not going to bring them something that I haven't done my homework on, not spoken to the professionals about. You know, the medical world have told me, they've said to me, look, this is a problem with men, but particularly the African Caribbean community, because they know that in England, right, a lot of them are not doing the checks. You go around the world, we're still the highest numbers of people that are not being checked. You know, so that's the challenge, Roger. The challenge for me now is not just about what happens today, what happens tomorrow, because we've lost somebody 27 years of age to prostate cancer. We've lost somebody 28 years of age. We've lost somebody 36 years of age. So my argument is, this is not an old man's illness anymore. This is a man problem, right? And when it's in the family, right, younger men are getting diagnosed, and the medical world are not treating men until they're in their 40s. Right. So what's happening to that younger generation? Right. Because now they're asking questions that me and you, when we were in that age group, we weren't allowed to go to our parents and say, oh, what does complication mean? What does waterworks mean? What does stoppage of water mean? We didn't. We grew up, we were told to see I'm blind, hear and deaf. And that has been our detriment. That is because
You're so right about that.
yeah.
Hey, Errol. What advice have you got for any man that has just been diagnosed with prostate cancer? What advice have you got for them?
Right. And again, you're on fire today, Roger. You know that in football terms, that's like winning the Champions League, man. Because that question is always a tricky one for an individual, because what you might say to A will be different to what you say to B. But what I do often say to people is, listen, when you are diagnosed, the first thing you need to do is to talk to your family about it, right? Openly talk to your family about it, because this is not something that you're going to be able to manage by yourself. Once you've spoken to your family about this, right, go out there and seek somebody like myself who runs an organization to help you, right, get through, right, the journey of being diagnosed with prostate cancer. Because if this is caught early, it's not only just treatable, it's curable. Right, that's the difference. If you had to choose a cancer, right, this is the one you choose because it's curable if it's caught early.
Right.
And men need to understand that you do not have to die through the two most important words with this: fear and ignorance. The fear of knowing and the ignorance to choose to do nothing about it. If you fight this, right, as my wife said, you will come out winning on points, and that's what you got to. That's what you got to do. Do not just give up. Yes, the diagnosis is never easy, you know. And as a listen, I did security work at clubs, nightclubs, and that for 10 years, right? I never, ever had any fear about dealing with the situations, right, that I had to deal with people, you know. And yet, right, when I was diagnosed with this, it broke me. I'm going to be honest with you, it broke me as a man. It broke me, you know. So I know what that feeling's like.
Okay. Were there any unexpected challenges as a survivor that you wish you had prepared yourself a little bit better for?
I tell you what, Roger, you're firing today, man. Definitely firing on questions.
I'm trying.
No, you're good. You're good. No, now, if I could turn the clock back, I would have been better mentally prepared for this. You know, it's easier to talk about things after the event, but the night before my operation, I did not have a clue what I was going to have done. I sat down with my wife, and you know what? Sharon looked at me and she explained the whole thing to me, right from top. Because when they gave they gave me a lot of literature, and I never read anything. I did not read anything. I thought I was going to be like a typical bad man, just walk in there, right, and walk straight back out as if nothing happened. Like I've had a scratch and I'm going to let it heal, right? This was more than a scratch, and I wasn't prepared, you know? And I've had to prepare as I'm learning and as I'm going through the journey, because I wasn't prepared before. So what we try to do now is help people to prepare, right, and tell them what the different options are, you know, because unless you're involved in this medical world, you think that the only thing you got to have done when you're diagnosed is you got to have the prostate removed. But now, because of the fantastic work that's going on out there now, right, with the research world and the surgeons and the medical world at present, there are so many different options, right, that you can have now that unless you know about it, you don't know what you're entitled to.
You know, I always wonder if being in different countries and the socioeconomic dynamics of all of us doesn't play a real important part in how we get treated and our survival rate. Yeah.
Well, there lies a good question, because, you know, I mean, you know, in England, we have the NHS, right? Now, it gets a lot of criticism for what it is and what it does. But when you are someone who has been treated, right, by the NHS for a life-threatening illness, then you realize how fortunate you are, because, you know, in America, as you know, these things have to be paid for, right? In the Caribbean, listen, if you don't have the money, you're not having anything done, you know. And that's why, from a charity point of view, we want to do something that's not been done before. We want to create a mobile testing vehicle, right, to go into the places where our men aren't being treated, right? And if we can get that support and that sponsorship, we will be able to go into the community and test people there and then. You know, I mean, look, you know, at the moment, I'm working with a company that we have the test kits. So we can do the test. We can go to somebody, they do the simple pinprick blood test, right? And it's 10 minutes before they get an answer.
Can you hold that up again, please, sir?
Yeah.
In front of your face. Yep.
Yeah. Nice. PSA testing kit, that is.
Thank you. Right? Thank you.
So we are working with this company at the moment, right, to make sure. I mean, listen, I've done, you know, the trial period, I've done 2,000 of these tests, right, that I've distributed, and we've had 10 positive people that have come back from it. 10.
Wow.
Right. For me, that's 10 too many. Right. But the fact is, right, that bringing the test to the masses, right, we feel that is the answer to this problem, because particularly in our community, because you can't always get an appointment with your doctor, and two, right, sometimes you go to the doctor and the doctor wants to know why you want to do this test, because in England there's no national screening, right, for prostate cancer. So
Right.
you're advised when you are 50 to go and get yourself tested. If you've got a history of it in your family or you're African Caribbean, then they suggest you do it at 45. But we have given them evidence, right, that men are dying younger of this problem. We have given them evidence of it, but it's not enough to sway a national screening. So we're saying if somebody out there wants to sponsor and support us, and they're happy with the publicity that it will bring, because it's not been done before, right?
Yep.
And we've got some of the best hospitals in England that are supporting what we're trying to do, and I want people to come on board and support us as a charity. I want them to support the Errol McKellar Foundation as a charity, because this legacy is not about today, it's about tomorrow.
Errol, what is the Errol McKellar Foundation?
Right, the Errol McKellar Foundation was born to raise the much needed awareness, right, and bring the most important information, right, to the masses, right, about prostate cancer and how you deal with prostate cancer. I mean, you asked the question about, when someone is first diagnosed. Well, when you're first diagnosed, after you've spoken to your family, we're your next point of call, right? Because if I don't have the answer, I will put you in touch with somebody who will give you the answer. Because, when you're in that doctor's room and you get diagnosed, you don't hear nothing else. You shut down. You completely shut down, Roger. And so, what I'm saying to people is, look, you need to have an education about this problem, right? In order to deal with something, if you open a book and you can read it, you got a better understanding. If you open a book and you can't read it, you don't know what the book is telling you.
Understood. I'd like to ask you, what would you say to give encouragement and hope to survivors and patients currently?
Right, to survivors, what I'm asking anyone who has survived prostate cancer, please, on behalf of Errol McKellar and the foundation, spread the word. Make sure that you talk to your friend. We do a number of group meetings, right? And we had two friends, right? Like me and you, they grew up in London, right? Raved together, partied together. They were both gallus, as we call them in the trade, right? They had women galore and everything. So these two guys are that close, and yet when they turned up at our meeting, A didn't know that B had the problem, and B didn't even know that A was going to be at the meeting, right? So, so my message is, right, for the survivor, right, please, right, join the campaign with us to spread this important word, right? And to the ones who have been diagnosed with it, right, the first thing is, and I know it's easier said than done, don't panic. Get the right information so that you make the right decision about what is needed. If you have to have the prostate removed, that's because the alternatives don't outweigh the problems that you're going to have, right? If you've got 90% cancer in your prostate, why are you keeping it? And if you've got a certain amount levels of cancer in your prostate, but there's ways out there to treat that, then you need to know about that. And listen, I go back to the medical world, and they are working tirelessly behind the scenes to raise this much important awareness. But they will tell you, as much as they do a lot of work with the research, it's no good unless people come forward, right? People have to come forward, Roger. And, what I'm hoping that happens from what you're doing tonight is that people take on board and support what we're doing. It needs to be a worldwide conversation, right? Men do not have to die of prostate cancer in this day and age. right? You know, 2010 when I was diagnosed, right, there was only the option of either keeping it or removing it. If I had the radiotherapy and it didn't work, there would have been a continuing problem. Now things are so much better now, right? That you do not have to go into it with the two words that I've used before, fear and ignorance. You don't need to have the fear of knowing and the ignorance to choose to do nothing about it, because we're the greatest, unfortunately, at ignoring anything that goes on with us. Right? We leave it, you know, listen, and I'm not against people taking herbal stuff and bush teas and bush this, but your body needs to have that medical advice, right? Because what might work, somebody might take some special herbs that's not necessarily going to work for somebody else, right? So I would never dismiss the herbalist side of it, but what I would say to people is you need to get that professional advice. That person who's giving you that advice is trained, right, in this conversation, because it's the conversation that will determine what you need to do next.
How has health and fitness changed since you've gone through your survival?
I mean, you know what? Health and fitness has been an interesting one, because on top of being diagnosed with prostate cancer, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes. Now, the diabetes one, I had to take that one on the chin, because if you give me a box of cakes, I'm not sharing it with you, Roger. Right? I'm
Sugar
eating
man.
Yeah, I'm a sugar lover, right? So it wasn't an overall shock, right? The fitness, I've always been somebody that has been, as a mechanic, you have to be fit to do that job anyway, right? And then secondly, because of my involvement with football, I didn't just train people, I took part in the training as well. So when you're training youngsters, you have to have a level of fitness about you, because I'm not going to tell you to run 3 miles if I'm not going to run the 3 miles with you. And my method of life is no pain, no gain.
Okay. All right, Errol, let me shake you up a little bit.
Yeah.
When we die, what happens to us, Errol?
Well, my belief is that, the body might leave, right? But the spirit lives on. That's my thought. The spirits definitely live on, because, I lost my mum in 2009, right? The year before my diagnosis. And the last thing my mum said to me before she passed, she said, "Son, I'm not worried about dying. I'm leaving you with good people," right? So for me, the spirit lives on, and I think if you got to have a belief that is strong to you, right? Because in the end, right, a lot of our illnesses is what happens in the mind. A lot of our illnesses, if the mind ain't right, then it's like the fuse in the plug. That plug is not working without the fuse, and that brain and the mindset is the fuse.
Buried or cremated?
Always burial for me. Always
Why?
burial, because I feel that if you burn something, you burn everything away. So if someone wants to be cremated, then that's the choice they make. I personally would not want to be cremated. I would like to feel, right, that my spirit will live on. I don't want to set my spirit on fire.
How do you? How has your religion really, really helped you on this journey?
I think it's helped me a lot, because if you believe in something as strong as I believe in God, right? People say to me, "There's no God, because why is there suffering?" People have to understand, right, is that there has to be sacrifices in order to make the journey a successful one. His son gave his life for us. That's what we are told. That's what we grew up learning, right? But that you would give your life, right, for your children. If they needed it, you would do it. So when you look at you have to look at your spiritual strength as well as your natural strength. And if the two are working at a good level, then you have a chance. But you have to believe in some people.
You know, Errol, I really appreciate you coming on my platform to speak about such a difficult subject. I really, really do appreciate that, man. You know, it's really nice to talk to someone and have a real conversation. As I said, there's so much pretense in social media.
Yeah.
You have friends that will even lie to you about the diagnosis itself. They lie to you that they went to the doctors. And not because they're wanting to lie to you. It's mainly because, you know, no one wants to look the devil in the eye, you know?
No. You know what it is though, Roger? There's a level of shame. There's a level of shame. And
But why is it shameful to be sick?
I think, you know, for us, and particularly us men, we have this image that is bestowed on us, right? You know, we are macho, we are physically strong, right? And you know, women, right? Women typify that same conversation, because me and you would kick down that door behind you, right? If it ain't opening, we're kicking it down because we're bad and we think we can do that. They just turn the handle and open the door.
Yep.
Right? Well, we ain't doing that. So what I'm saying is that sometimes there's a level of strategy, right, that you have to work with, and we don't have that patience to be able to do that. Whereas, listen, our sisters, we are blessed. We are blessed, really, because, you know, first of all, it's our mum, and then it's our queen, right? You know, and although mum will always be your queen, right? When you marry a queen, right, then you realize how blessed you are.
That's right. No, I agree with you. You know, there's a component that's made you strong that you don't even realize, and I'm going to tell you. And you may not like it, but you know, because of your affiliation to the boys from White Hart Lane and their propensity to consistently lose, a guy like you having hope, it's easy. You know, the last time,
I have to agree with you. Listen, let me tell you, I have suffered for that club. You know.
Do you remember the Ricky Villa goal against Manchester City? Was it in the FA Cup?
Yeah.
And when Osvaldo Ardiles and Glenn Hoddle, Steve Archibald, Garth Crooks, Chris Houghton, Steve Perryman. I'm just trying to let you know. I didn't just come around. I know what you've been through. I know the suffering you've been through.
You told me what team you support yet, Roger.
Football is a little bit funny for me because I came to the States at a time when the television wasn't digital, so I didn't get to see a lot of English football. But I used to play FIFA.
Okay.
And because I started playing FIFA, my football support had nothing to do with the teams. It had to be black players. So it all started with black players because my father, when Clyde Bess used to play, you know, hey, Clyde Bess is playing. You know, that was the only time they wake you up and make you watch Match of the Day because there was a black man playing. So it was always that.
My dad supported West Ham and he never went there. He never ever went there.
That's
but
right.
Only one he remembered was Clyde Bess. He didn't even remember that Bobby Moore, Jeff Hurst, Martin Peters.
Were they? So for me, it was then, and then it was like a little bit Chris Houghton, and then it was Garth Crooks, and then it was the late Campbell, Ian Wright, Paul Davis, Rocastle. You know what I mean? And then when you had 5 black guys on Arsenal, you know, that was those were the time. Right.
David Rocastle, remember?
The late David as well. Yeah. So then you bring it back to me playing FIFA in America. I can't see digital football. All I can see is basketball and American football here. I got FIFA and I open it up and there's Didier Drogba and like 9, you know, Mourinho had like 11 black players, you know, because he didn't care. He put the guys on that could play. So I had to be a Chelsea supporter. I don't care how racist you say Chelsea was. They were the first team to have 9 and 10
Yeah, well,
black
you
men, Africans.
remember Paul Cannavale? Remember
Yeah,
Paul
yeah,
Cannavale?
yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
they slaughtered him, man. What a player!
Yep,
You
yep,
know,
yep.
Mark Steen. Paul Elliott. Listen, they had some really good players. Chelsea had some really good players.
So
And I
now
look,
it's still them. Still them.
yeah,
Yep, yep, yep. But I grew up as a Tottenham supporter back in the day, But you
yeah.
had to because you lived in Tottenham.
Come in the hood. You came out the hood,
All
so
right, you know that.
you,
You
you
know
couldn't,
that.
you couldn't be a red. You
Yes,
could
yes,
not be
yes,
a
yes.
red.
And
You
they're
know.
really a South London team, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, they won't admit, it, but they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're
Hey,
dominant.
once again, Errol, I really, really am grateful for you to take the time out and talk to me.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank
And if one
Listen.
man sees it, as you said, if one man
Yeah.
sees it and goes and gets their PSA checked,
Yeah.
we're winning. We're winning.
Listen, I want to say a special thank you to you. I want to say a special thank you to your listeners, and please spread the word. The Errol McKellar Foundation is here, not just in England, around the world. It's here. The Errol McKellar Foundation is here to support everyone, particularly in this particular situation, because we are blessed to be working with some of the best people in the world in dealing with this particular problem. So any knowledge that we have, we want to be able to share it with people. Come on board and support us, sponsor us in what we're doing, because together we will make a difference. And that's what we want to do.
Thank you, my boss. Enough respect.
Big up, man. Big up. When you coming to England, though? When you coming back?
When the pound get weaker, I pound strong, I pound strong. All right,
Yeah.
boss.
We love you for that, man. Stay blessed, Roger. Thanks again, yeah?
All right, boss.